Football is the UK's most popular sport. It's the dream of thousands of school children that they'll be the next David Beckham, Steven Gerrard or Wayne Rooney. However, the truth is that less than 1% of children that join an academy at the age of 9 make it into the professional game, and fewer homegrown players than ever are featuring in the Premier League on a regular basis. During the 2015-16 season, just 31% of top-flight players were English. If you compare that to other European nations, half of the players in the German Bundesliga were German nationals, and in Spain, 58% of the footballers in La Liga Santander were Spanish. During this programme I will speak to current and former players, scouts and coaches, as well as Daily Telegraph columnist Jim White, to find out how the English youth system is failing and what can be done to resolve the issue. To understand the shortcomings of the system, we need to first look at how players are recruited and nurtured during their youth. In England, young players are spotted in just two ways, either by small scouting networks set up by pro clubs or by attending open trials. From there, players trial for a longer period of time, usually around 6 weeks, before being invited to join the club's academy. At the academy, players will play against other academy sides and schools whilst training weekly with their club. Then, at 16, a player will either be offered a 2-year scholarship or released, before a final decision is made at 18. At this stage, a player will either be signed on a professional contract or let go. So how does a club identify promising young talent? What is it that scouts try and find in players before they bring them to the club?
It depends really, because I've spent years scouting at the very, very young ages, pre-academy, 7, 8, 9 years old, and then I've also spent time scouting within the first team environment, looking at potential players, and also within the academy system from 13 to 16s, where you're looking at players that clubs may buy. So realistically, it's very hard to gauge players on the very young age. So the simple thing really I look for was, what was their outstanding attribute? What did they have that somebody else didn't have? You know, it may be as simple as they were a wonderful striker of the ball. They maybe had real pace. They maybe had a wonderful balance. Maybe they had a trick that nobody else could do. You know, obviously going up into the first team level becomes very different. You're looking for what the manager wants in that player. He might just want a centre half that heads it and kicks it because he's got a lovely little footballer to play around him. You know, and then you go into the academy when you're looking 13 to 16-year-olds. Again, then you're trying to fill the profile of what that club wants with that player. But generally speaking, you know, you're looking for athletic players who are technically good.
If you look at Dele Alli, classic example, he's just turned 21. He can get around the pitch. He's physically very, very good. He's got an edge to him. They're the types of players that get through, and everyone forgets, you know, he's 6 foot. He's not a small fella.
I think you do get seen. You get your opportunity to be seen. But I think it's what they're looking for and what they're looking to develop in your game. If you're playing on a field of 11 players and the tallest, biggest, loudest player gets noticed, and then a really gifted player who's more quiet, easily goes under the radar. You see it all the time.
So with clubs seemingly prioritising physicality over ability, I looked at the FA's recently published England DNA, the FA's guideline for clubs at all levels outlining their philosophy as well as their expectations of the perfect England player and coach. The DNA was published in 2014 after being developed at St George's Park by players and coaches. The FA also released promotional videos outlining the programme ideas, all of which can be found on the FA's website.
We wanted to put down on paper what we stand for, what do we believe in, how do we want our players to look, how do we want to play, how do we want to coach.
I think everybody at every level of the game is looking for leadership from the FA to say, this is what we believe, you're part of the process of developing future England winning teams. Because everybody that touches a player along the pathway will have played a part from grassroots, from their first experiences of football through club academies into the national team. There's consistency of messages, and a lot of that will come back to needing the player to have a growth mindset and wanting to continually learn and improve.
The purpose is to define England teams and England players for the future. We have to have a seamless structure where there's a golden thread that runs through all of the teams, that we're coaching them consistently. The messages are the same. We're playing the same way. We're selecting talent in the same way to play to play the England way. So we have to ensure we get those core elements right.
According to the DNA, the future England player should have an extensive blend of technical, tactical, physical and psychological attributes, including power, strength, agility, speed, attacking and defending skills, confidence and creativity. Despite the introduction of the FA's England DNA, players and coaches alike are still lacking clear direction and clear messages from the people in charge.
We don't have a clear route from there to there in terms of what coaches are being asked to do and being taught. On my English A licence, I had a practice assessment. Let's say it was on a Friday. I went to one of the coach tutors on the Thursday night. I said, "Can you give me a little bit of advice, please?" And he said to me, "Sorry, you need to ask your own tutor. You need to have his answer." I'm saying, "What do you mean?" There has to be a generic answer, or you must know how my coach is thinking. You must know what I want to deliver is correct. The only resources I got on my A licence was flip charted and PowerPointed to death. I was given no resources. So I'm doing a degree at football and I don't get a textbook or I don't get a resource for £3,500.
For young players that do make it through the academy system, signing their first professional contract at a football club should be the realisation of a dream. However, many young pros are only offered a 1 or 2 year deal, meaning they're constantly fighting to secure their next contract. In addition to this, they may not even make an appearance for their senior side before the end of their first deal.
There's not a single player in the City team, in the City first team squad who's come through, and yet they're in the FA Youth Cup all the time. Now, is that the fault of the players? Is that the fault of the academies, or is it the fault of the system? I'd say it's the fault of the system. In that Pep Guardiola and Antonio Conte are under enormous pressure to deliver results yesterday, never mind today or indeed tomorrow. And they can't afford to bring in a young kid and hope that he will learn and be educated. They just haven't got that chance. They simply can't. Their owners are saying, we've got to win in the Champions League, we've got to win in the Premier League, we've got to be there or thereabouts all the time. And yeah, they might occasionally be able to school a guy in a League Cup tie, but they can't put him in to the harem scarum of weekly Premier League football. And that's the one place that you need to test yourself to become a proper player.
The other side of the coin is, how long does a manager get? They get very, very short shelf lives. And sometimes, unless the culture of the football club's right from the top to the bottom, sometimes young players, they hit a brick wall because a manager's looking, I've got to get 3 points on a Saturday, because if I don't, I'm going to get the sack. And it's very easy for youth development coaches to cast a roaming eye and say, well, that's wrong, that's wrong. But the reality is, there's lots of good managers in the world of football currently out of work, because they've had 3 or 4 games where they've lost on the spin and they've got the sack. So I think it's a catch-22, and I think not only is the culture of young players trying to come through got to change, I think the culture at the very upper echelon of the football clubs, boards of directors, I think has also got to change. That's a culture. They can't just be a hire and fire, because a manager will never give youth protégés the opportunity and the chance, because young kids make mistakes, you have to understand that. And they're not going to just walk in, very few walk in overnight and become an instant success.
With managers in the league reluctant to give youth players first-team opportunities, it should come as no surprise that the attrition rate is highest for people dropping out of football completely between the ages of 16 and 21. The lack of link between a football education and a formal education forces some players to choose between the two.
I think there's a huge issue around education because the system basically precludes against education. It actually militates against education, because you get them in at the age of 8 and you're basically telling them you're now a Chelsea player. You've got the badge, you've got the shirt, you're going along to matches. You're not a Chelsea player. You know, you're not going to be a Chelsea player until you're 18. You're not a Chelsea player, but you think you are. So you basically prioritise that over your education, and education slips away, and at the age of 16 they'll say to you goodbye. They've got no more sense of responsibility over you than ever.
So I kind of thought, I got to an age where I thought I need to progress somehow. Like, I don't want to be a 21, 22-year-old without any qualifications and just get dumped out of the football system because of size or whatever it was. So I thought I'd come to Coventry University, and they offered some footballing on the side, so I thought I could get the best of both. I did look into doing a US scholarship, but I think again the commitment of travelling thousands and thousands of miles and living away from home, and it's a massive commitment for something that could not come off at all. And it seems like everyone's going over there, and young English talent is shipping their hopes abroad, when really in an ideal world, like, we've got the space, we've got the universities, we've got all the facilities in football, but we just don't seem to be utilising them.
If you're at Arsenal, you can do any kind of education like. You can do the A-levels like you're doing here, because they'll have an complete on-site education. Norwich City send their lads, if they from 13 or 14, they go almost into the club full time. They've got an agreement with a private school. The kids go into the private school, do all their education there, and come out, and they live away from home in this boarding school. So they can do BTECs if that's where they are intellectually. They can do A-levels if that's where they are intellectually. Unfortunately, clubs like Luton, who are further down the scale, have less money, don't have that facility. They're a Cat 3 academy, which doesn't demand they do that. So all Luton can offer is a statutory standard BTEC in sports science, if you want to loosely call it that. You know, it's not quite as glorious as sports science. So the boy who is intelligent, that can be a footballer, can't secure his backup route with A-levels because he can only do a BTEC there.
If you look at a League Two player, now in the overall scheme of things, a League Two player is a very successful footballer. Yes, he's not made it to the Premier League, but he's earning money as a professional footballer. He's very, very successful. However, when he gets to 35, he's going to have to find another way of earning a living, because he's not earned enough. You know, most of them don't earn what Paul Pogba's earning. Most of them earn pretty modest wages in League Two. He's got to, at 35, go off and get something. And suddenly he finds he's in a market with people who've got degrees. He hasn't got anything. Yes, he's been a footballer, but, you know, there's nothing else. Yeah. And so football, I think, has a responsibility to get its players, young players, educated. It also, I think, would benefit from it, because I think they'd be better players.
For players that choose to follow their footballing dream and largely put aside their formal education, problems can occur further down the line if they're released at a later stage. Therefore, realistic exit routes have become imperative, and some clubs fail to support these youngsters sufficiently.
But the problem they have is at 16, 17, 18, those sorts of years, is what actually happens when they get released. I think with the EPPP and various initiatives the FA have tried to bring out into the game, I think that's something that the culture of England's a lot more looking at, is exit routes and pathways for players. But ultimately, when a player leaves at 18 years old, everyone's a little bit interested in him for 6 months, but the harsh reality is they've got to concentrate on the next 18-year-old coming through, the next 19-year-old.
I mean, for example, what we try to do here is we try to have as many different exit routes as we can. We have the States, we have Luton Town, we have Oxford City, which is Conference South, we have Hitchin, which is a level below that, we have Leverstock Green, which is a level I beg your pardon, we have Kings Langley, which is a level below that, and then we have Leverstock Green and Leighton Town, which is a level below that. So we're always pushing lads to try and get them to go into the right standard for them. The problem is, I think, with a lot of football clubs, is once a boy gets to the end of it, you're no good to me, so don't care anymore.
One club giving youth a second chance and working hard to provide an academy exit path is Boldmere St Michael's. Boldmere compete in the Midland Football Premier Division and are developing a local reputation for nurturing young talent. I went down to the club to speak to Burton Albion midfielder Cameron Shaw, who is on loan at the non-league side. What made you come to Boldmere? How did this move kind of come about?
I wasn't really playing in the youth team at Burton, and it was in my best interest to play, come here and play 90 minutes and get regular game time. So it happens every year. Like, the ones who aren't going to get a contract at Burton, what they'll do is they'll look for clubs like Boldmere and Long Eaton. There'll be 5 or 6 lads out on loan at teams, and my coach called me and said, I've been ringing around the clubs local to you. Spoke to Boldmere. He said there was Highgate, and they were 19th in the league, and I was like, oh, I don't want to go there. And I remember playing here 2 years before this Astro was built, and the team were just rough. And I'm not like a rough sort of person, so I was scared to come here. And I've come to training the one night and I've seen all this, and it was like, obviously it's a nice setup. And the training with the lads was good, and just started moving from there really.
Since joining the club, Cam has scored twice and provided numerous assists, as well as picking up a Man of the Match award against Long Eaton United in just his second appearance.
How big a difference is it playing at that level, maybe that protected academy bubble, you could say, to being in the thick of it in men's football?
You can't, there's no comparison to be fair, and like everyone else that goes out on loan, that first game, like you feel the difference, and everyone says like, oh, how good is it to be out like at a club, men's football, because when you're playing youth team football, it doesn't mean anything. Like there's alright, you're in a league when you're in the youth team, but it doesn't mean anything. We'll lose, and like you still like go out on the night, and you'd go home, have a laugh. It wouldn't bother you. Here, if you lose, if we lose here and not everyone's down about it, I won't speak to anyone after we lose.
So after taking adult football so confidently in his stride, it begs the question as to why such a talented youngster was left out of his youth side in the first place.
What do you think was one of the key factors at Burton as to why you weren't, given that chance? What do you think maybe you lacked in your game, or they didn't want from your game?
I was told quite early on that I was going to get a contract, and I sort of thought he had a problem with me, and it was something personal. He didn't play me, and it sort of came like a me against you thing with the coach, and we just didn't really. It's not that we didn't get on, but I just thought it was more personal, like why he didn't play me, because he was playing people that weren't as good as me, rather than me, and everyone would say to me, "Oh, look, why is he not playing you?" And that's why I just thought it was more personal.
What kind of impact does that have on you? Because obviously, I've seen you play. You're a talented player. You've obviously got a lot of belief in your own ability. You're saying that people around the club at Burton are saying you should be given that chance. How disappointing is it that a personal relationship has blocked your progression?
Massive. It is really deflating. And we'd go to games. We'd have games at Grimsby away, Bradford away, and for me that's Hartlepool away. That's 4 hours.
That's a long trip.
And I've gone to Grimsby, and I wouldn't be in the squad. So I wouldn't play, I wouldn't warm up, I'd just go and watch the game, travel 3-4. And it would just make me more angry, I'd just get more. I've been on the verge of quitting. I was on the verge of quitting Burton at least 3-4 times. And then since then, they're not really interested at all, to be fair.
So I'm assuming when your time is finished with Burton, you will leave them.
Yeah, definitely.
What are you looking to do from there on in?
So we go to college on a Thursday, a Monday morning and a Friday morning. You had the choice of either doing we've got a diploma. You can either do the shortened version of it, the normal diploma, or an extended diploma in BTEC level 3 sport, I think it is. It's something that I've spoke about a lot with the family, me and my dad talk about all the time, but I haven't actually come up with something that I want to do yet.
So there it is, another talented youngster falling out of the system, neglected by an academy, unsure of where to go next. There has to be a change, an overhaul of the system similar to the Germans in the early 2000s. The system in place is failing, and until changes are made from the very top, players and coaches alike will continue to struggle. Talented youngsters will continue to slip through the net.